Hey there everyone, Tesh here back again with another video, and in this video you are going to see that how can I make a simple nodejs endpoint in the REST API and how can I dockerize it and push that image onto the Docker Hub. Remember a couple of keywords here. I didn't say that you will learn, I just said you will watch it because this is not a tutorial. Okay, Tish, if this is not a tutorial, why does this video exist? Now, in the later on upcoming few weeks, I really wanted to make a playlist about the Docker as well as on Kubernetes, and this is a preparation material for that. I thought, why to make a preparation material behind the scene? Why not to just record that and also push it onto YouTube so that at least you can learn something from it. A big wider note on this one is this video is not about the caching of the images. Those who already know the Docker, I won't be showing you the caching because that's a part of later on videos. And yes, despite saying this, there will be left and right comment under this video that, hey, this is not the optimized way. You're not caching. It's not about that. I wanted to prepare some images so that later on I can use them for teaching the Docker. And this is a part of that video. Again, a couple of similar videos will also be coming up on the channel. These are all preparation material for the upcoming Docker series. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. In case you want to follow that, yes, you will be able to completely follow this along. This tutorial or this watching video will give you a lot of insight as well as some of the confidence about that. Yes, I can also do it. So let's go ahead. Enough of the theory talk. Let's go ahead and write some code and fun stuff. So first and foremost, in order to follow along with me in this video, you first need to install Docker on your system. Now, Docker installation is not a big deal anymore. It's really simple. You can just install the Docker desktop. It's available for almost everything that you want. If I go ahead into the guides, I quickly see that there is a getting started guide and there is a whole lot of things that you can do with that. The easiest one is to go into the manual and I want to install the Docker. Where do you want to install it? On a Mac, on a Windows, or all in a Linux system? That's all the guides are available. It's just a matter of next. In case you are on Linux, that is also super easy. For example, on Windows, here is the desktop for Windows, just next. And again, they are also mentioning system requirement for if you want to go with Hyper-V, which is the default one. If you want to go with WSL2 backed, they give you all the guides. So you can also use some command line utilities like Chocolatey and stuff and can install that on Windows. So regardless how you do it, it's a pretty simple install. You get this application here. Same for the Linux as well. It's available in a couple of flavors, the most popular ones. Of course, it cannot be available for everyone. And Ubuntu, the most famous one, here is the uninstallation prerequisites. And here is how you install it. That's all it is. And then you can just run the Docker version. So regardless of how you install that, you are going to require a Docker in your system. If I go ahead and fire up my terminal app, I should be allowed to have a simple Docker -v or version. And yep, if this looks like something like this, then yes, you have the Docker installed. It says, how can I find the Docker version? That should be here. So there's a lot of commands available. As long as you get something like this, then it should be all okay. Let me try out with the Docker -v. Yep, correct. So Docker version, regardless of what version is installed in the system, you should have a Docker version. Now, apart from this, since we are going to be pushing a JavaScript-based API onto a Docker Hub and we'll be creating an image based on that, you're also going to require some Node.js, 18, 19, whatever the version suits you. Just go ahead and install that. I'm going to go ahead and say node-v, and it gives me a version 16. And I'll update this. I'll update this very soon. But this is okay. This is totally fine with that. So any version should be fine. All right, so this is the basics. You should have both of them installed. Now, I also have this Docker up and running here. So this is how it runs these days. So if I go ahead up here, this is freshened up. I have removed all the things. We have nothing in the container. All the images has been pruned out and volumes is also wiped out. So there is nothing right now. We want to learn, or we definitely want to create some of the code pieces. Now again, the series that I want to make in the upcoming days, it's not going to be a coding series, but rather a DevOps friendly series where we focus more on Docker and Kubernetes. So writing part of the code is just because I wanted to make an end-to-end tutorial. You don't want to download some files from there or something. So instead of that, we're going to be writing everything on our own. So that's what we'll be doing. Okay, all right. Let me fire up my VS Code. Here we go. And I have this folder DevOps, and I'm going to go ahead and call this one as simply code files. Yeah, because a couple of code files are going to be coming in. I'll be creating a couple of more series or videos on this one. I'm going to call this one as Hey Node.js, and let's drag and drop this one. All right, looks pretty good. So far, nothing really complicated. All right, full screen. There we go, nice and easy. Now I want to open up my terminal. In case you don't know how to open that, that should be pretty easy. Just click on view and you can open up the terminal. This is an inbuilt terminal. The advantage is I don't have to traverse into directories and CDs and all of that. I don't have to do that. And now first thing is we are going to start npm. So we're going to say npm init. npm is something that comes up with the node.js, so that should be fine. And we also want to give a flag of -y so that it should not be keep on asking us, hey, do you want this or that and all of that. It just creates a package.json file, couple of editings that we are going to do in this file. The first one is we're going to replace this start test with a start, and we are going to replace this entire thing with node index.js. All right. The reason why we are doing it is simply because in the main, it's already written as index.js. This is the main file, and we want to run that through the node utility. So obviously we need to create an index file. So we're going to go ahead and say index.js. Now we're going to be creating a couple of files and folders, and we're going to remove them as well. Yes, we can create the Docker ignore file, but that's for a later on tutorial. Right now we want to go through this path. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is install a package. So that will help us to create the APIs, and we're going to go ahead and say npm install, and we're going to go ahead and install Express. Now Express will help us to quickly create the REST APIs, and we don't know much about the Express. Let's just assume that. We're going to go ahead and say Express npm documentation would be always good idea. All right. So everything is going to come up from the documentation, from the getting started guide. So how to write a hello world in this one. And this is exactly what they say is how you write the hello world. All right, let me just copy this. We are going to copy this and we'll come back here. We'll just paste it out. That's all what we are doing. So you don't need to learn that how this code actually works, but you should have a fairly brief idea of what this application is about. The complex business logic is for the developers, not for the people who are in operations or in DevOps. You just need to know this is going to run on port 3000. This is common for every Node.js application, not the port, but the syntax of how it works. There is always a port. There is always some kind of node environment that you have to create. That's the basics of it. Same goes for Python and for Java as well. They have their own kind of a common things that you always have to kind of do. And that's what we are learning or will be learning in the future. So what we're going to do is we are going to just modify this a little bit so that it looks a little bit good. So what we're going to do is instead of saying res.send, let's go ahead and throw up a JSON response and remove this hello world. I don't like that. I'll just go ahead and say this will be saying something like, hey, and we're going to go ahead and say node.js. All right. And this is the basics. We don't need to make this application any more complex, but just like we have given here a slash so that the default application will throw us a response of hey node.js, we can create more routes. But I think for this application, creating more routes is just going to create some more complexity for the operations perspective for the people who are not interested in the coding part. So we're going to just keep it as it is. All right. So this is the basics of it, and the application works. In order to test this out, all we can do is, remember in the package.json, we have run this start command. So we can actually use this, or we can just directly write node. So we're going to be running a command which is more friendly. Let's go ahead and say that I want to say node index.js. Example app is listening on port 3000. So that's great. Let's go up here and say that, hey, I want to listen on localhost 3000, and it says, hey, Node.js. That's all. The testing is done. So let's go ahead and stop this. Now, a couple of things. Now, yes, we are going to learn the best ways later on. Right now, the first thing I want to do is right click on the node modules and delete this. Again, yes, there are better ways. I just want to make this application a little bit simpler to follow and some confidence in you so that you can actually push this image onto the Docker Hub. Applications are important, but confidence is equally important. Let's create a new file and call this one as Docker file, and that's it. Your VS Code might ask you to install a couple of extensions. Go ahead and install that. These are always a great idea. Before I go ahead and do this, also, you should visit hub.docker.com. And once you visit this, this will ask you to create an account. Go ahead and create an account. My account is a little bit older one. And I published one image, Hello Crow, 4 years ago. Now we'll be publishing a few more images for the upcoming series. So you can just click on this, my profile, and all the repositories or anything images that you have pushed will be available here. Remember, you have to go ahead and log in into this one. So create an account. After this, from the terminal itself, you have to just run a command that says docker login. Once you do this, this will take you on the browser and you have to use the same credentials that you have used for creating the account, and you'll be logged in into the terminal of your computer. That's all you have to do. Now, here comes the operation part. In the world of operations, people don't write too much of the code, but they have to write the minimalistic code that is not basically a code, but more of rather a configuration file, a syntactical file that helps them to push the code, entirety of the code, zip them up and push it somewhere. In this case, the zip is actually an image that can be utilized on multiple platforms, on our local system, on AWS, on Google Cloud. A lot of places this code is going to be used. Now, the best part is, as long as developers knows the bits and basics of how to create these images, as an operation guy or a DevOps guy, you don't have to really worry about whether this application is being built in Python or Node.js. We rarely care as a DevOps engineer. So let's go ahead and see that. This is something which is done usually by developers of creating an image, but as a DevOps engineer, you should also know bits and pieces of it. Now, the first step is to have a from. Now, this from is going to just simply say from where do you want to take your base image. Now, base image is something which is available on the Docker Hub. For example, I can just look for a Node.js image, and you're going to see there is a lot of Node.js images, Node.js agent and whatnot, and all of these. I just look for a node image. Yep, that's what I want to look. And if you look up for the tags, I'll explain these tags later on. There's the latest, there is a slim version, there is a hydrogen version, buster slim and whatnot. The only difference is that the latest one is of 353 MB and the slim version is 75 MB, so quite good one. Depends on what's your use case. Do you want to rely just on the basic core components of Node, or your application consumes a lot more than Node and all the packages that it offers? So from where we pick up a base image. And I'll walk you through what this base image is later on, but right now just assume it has enough of the components of OS and networking and the application that it is going to successfully run your application. So we're going to go ahead and say that I want a node image. And if you have installed the Docker extension, then you can go ahead and put up a colon and press Control and space, and it's going to load that what all images are available. Right now it says loading, but within a few seconds, there we go. We have a lot of images available, and you can see the scroll bar. This goes like pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and just use the slim version. So it's automatically going to pick up the latest slim version. Not a great idea. You should be mentioning the version number, but yeah, I give you on that. We are just explicitly doing it. The next step is to define your working directory. That since this is a container image, everything is going to go in some place. So we have to define that. I'll just call this one as /app. Feel free to call it even at a /. Slash is not a good idea to run your application, so have it in some folder, /app, /atesh, /YouTube, wherever you want to have this one. Now we are going to go ahead and copy from source to destination. Source is current directory, so I'll just say dot. This is a shorthand for picking up all the files from the current directory. That's why we deleted node modules, because we want to copy that over. We don't want to do that. Yes, we could have created a Docker ignore file, but we'll talk about them later on. To the destination, we want to copy all the files into /app. And yes, this is the exact point where people will be shouting at the comment section, hey, we should copy package.json. We will talk about the caching later on. Right now, you can ignore that. And then we're going to go ahead and run some command. The reason for that is that we want to run the command npm install is along with just the package.json, it doesn't work. It needs the node module directories. Since we have removed it, and when we will be copying these files into the Docker images, this won't be there. So in order to repopulate that, this is the command that we use, npm install. This will bring back the node module folders back. So once this is back, that means our application is looking absolutely fantastic. Just one tiny more thing which you should be worried about is notice our application is running on port 3000. Right now, this Docker is like, it's not good to say, but it's almost like a virtual machine. Yes, I know a lot of people will be bashing me on the comments. It's not a virtual machine. Okay, let's assume right now that it is almost a virtual machine. Right now, there is no port exposed out of it. So we need to expose the port so that we can see what's running in that machine. I know. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say expose, and the port is 3000. All right, now final thing is the command, because your application is installed, copied, node module folder is created. But remember, we actually ran our application by running the command node index.js. And this is exactly the command. And yes, there are a couple of ways how we can write the command, better ways, bad ways. We'll talk about them later on. And this is it. This is all the development part that as a DevOps engineer you usually do. And even not that much. This is usually given to you as an image by the developer itself. And that's why we call the DevOps as a contribution from developer comes up, a contribution from operation guy comes up, and we build an ecosystem and environment for that. So this is the basics of how a Docker file is being created. Now, this is all done. This is all the programmatic part of the Docker. Now we can just close all of this and can go into the terminal. Now, here comes the best part. Now we're going to use a few Docker commands to first build an image. The image will be based on the configuration that we have mentioned in the Docker file. This will be utilized. It's not perfect, it's not being cached, but it is. And the goal is to build an image, also to make sure that that image runs. We need to run that. Once we have run that, we'll stop that image and we'll push this image onto Docker Hub so that anybody can pull this image and at least can run the basic application that we have created here. All right, let's go ahead. So what we're going to do is, first, it's really simple. We're going to say that, hey, Docker, I want to build something. And in the build, we are going to provide a -t as well. Now, why -t? -t is a tag option. You can go ahead and use without t as well, and it will give you a random name, which is not good. It will be not really great. We want to use -t. Now, a little bit more of a stuff. So let me go ahead and walk you through here onto the Docker Hub. Now, when you go onto the Docker Hub, let me go ahead and move on to the Docker Hub. If you remember, there is always your profile name, whatever the name you have chosen. So if in case I check for my profile, there is /u and then your name. This is your profile name. And if you tag your images here, that means anybody can pull your images. So let me walk you through with an old image. Anybody can pull my image by running the command docker pull and then my name, that is my username. It will be different for you when you will be creating accounts. So make sure you mention that. And then after that, whatever you have named your image. In my case, I said Hello Crow, but in this case, I want to say something different. All of your images will be tagged as your profile name and then a slash and then like this. We want to follow the same kind of a thing. All right. So let's go up here. So we're going to say that I want to tag all of my images with my username and then whatever the name you want to give. I want to call this one as Hey Node.js. Now this is it. This is good, but eventually there might be some incremental updates in the images and all of that. And for that, the Docker actually gives you a couple of more options. When we search for this node, in case you might have noticed, there are tags, and these are the tags that are available up here. So notice here, :latest, :it's slim, and there are a lot of versions on top of that. If I click on this one, I'll show you that there are a lot of versions available up here. Numbers and long SHA values and whatnot. We want to follow the same kind of a convention here that we want to tag our images, something like that. Okay, how we can do that? It's totally up to you how you want to tag them. The easiest way is to call this one as 0. And again, my bad. We need to call this one as .0. So my bad, and then say 0.0.0. And this is the basics of how you start your application. And eventually you make an increment of .1, .2 like that. And I've already made a video about that how these versionings are being tracked in the NPM, details about NPM. But right now we want to go just the one because this is the basic. And we want to call it as, this is a Docker convention, .release. And yes, you don't need to do it. This part is totally optional. You can just call it as :latest, which automatically gets up there. Or you can just call it as 0.0.1. That is also fine. But in all of the tutorials, in all of the documentation, this is a convention that we want to use. So I'll just go with that. All right. So this is my basic. Now, one more thing, put up a space and just mention a dot. All right. Why this dot? This dot is to mention that the Docker file based on which you have to create this image or build this image is available in the current directory. Yes, in the world of Docker, everything which is in the current directory is not mentioned as /, but just the dot, in case you're coming up from a programming background. So this is the dot. That means, hey, if you're going to look for it, the Docker file is just right there. And this is exactly what we want. Now, as soon as I hit enter, this is going to take some time. Although we have used the Node Slim version, but this is going to take some time because it runs the npm install, which also takes a little bit time and all of that. Your system might take a little bit more time than what I have. Okay. Now, a couple of things. We can go ahead and run a couple of commands, something like docker container, and we can do a quick ls that, hey, how many containers are there? Right now we can see no container ID, no image, no command, no created. So it's empty. It's flushed out. Everything is all gone. Now we want to run this. We want to check that whether we have image or not. Now just quick note, I can just click on this and click on the dashboard. And in the dashboard, if I check out the images, notice there is one image. Now, yes, there is a command line way of doing that as well. But we have seen that this image, pretty big, but it is available now. And this is entirety of my code. I don't have to worry about environment, what to install, Ubuntu, nothing. It is just all there. Now, if this image is there, I would love to run this image. So let's go ahead and run a couple of more commands. We're going to go ahead and say docker container, and we're going to say, hey, I want to run an image, but I want to run it in the detach mode. -d is the option, or you can write -- detach. What it does, it frees up your terminal. That's it. Otherwise, your terminal is busy. If you write -d, you can do much stuff. It keeps things in the background. And the most important part is -p. That means, hey, I want to free up a port. And notice on this machine, I have the port 3000. I want to bind it from the Docker port of 3000. Now, if the Docker port would be 5000, I would say, hey, 5000, we can mismatch the ports as well. No big deal. Let's just say in our machine, 3000 is busy. I will just free up 3001. Totally up to you, how you want to do it. I will talk about them later on, but this is all the basics. Okay, all right, this is all good. Now, what image you want to run? I want to run this image, which is this. But remember, this is not all that we have. Remember, we said, hey, we want a specific version of the image, which is 0.0.1. And then we say .release. And yes, release. And yes, you have to provide the entirety of the name and versions and all of that. And again, by the way, if you want to cheat a little bit, go ahead into dashboard and look for this one. You have to mention this tag 0.0.1.release. In case you haven't mentioned this, there's the tag latest already given to you. So this is the basics, and let's just hit a space and hit an enter. Now it gives us a really long string back, which is a SHA value. Again, don't worry about this. We just want to run the command docker container ls. Now this time Docker says, hey, there is a port ID. Remember, they always gives you just a couple of words because, hey, who wants to write this big? And the name of the image is here. And it says, hey, everything is running, and it has also exposed a port for you. Now, if I go back and try to see on the local host 3000, it still gives me, hey, Node.js. To verify that again, I need to stop this. So how can I stop this? It's pretty easy. All I have to say, hey, I want to stop a container. So I can just go ahead and say docker container stop and just mention 820. You can just mention 2-3 letters of this because it will figure it out automatically that, hey, there is no two container which are of the same name. So I better just stop this one, whatever that is. Yes, it always takes a little bit time to stop that. So don't panic out. Okay, it says stop that. Now, if I run this command again, docker container ls, nothing is there. Go back up here and hit a reload, and you cannot reach the website. Okay, this much is confirmed that I was able to create a REST API, at least one endpoint, and was able to containerize it. And now I want to run that. I can run that. Now, the idea is that it should be public. It should be available on my Docker Hub so that later on I can pull it, as well as anybody else who wants to can actually go ahead and pull this up. Let's go ahead and try this out. So all we have to do is, I want to say docker push. This will, you have already gone through with the Docker login, given the fact. Now I just want this name. So I'll be just saying, hey, by the way, I can actually just say docker push, and I can scroll a little bit and take out this name. So I'll just copy this so that I don't make mistake. And I'll just paste it here. You can also write it in case you want to. I'll just say, hey, hit enter. And this will take my image and will push it onto the repository from where anybody can pull this off. You might be in AWS, Google Cloud, or anybody else. You will be able to pull this off because this is public one. There are other ways of storing these repositories or these images, but we're not that advanced right now. We're just going for that. I think this is going to take just a few more minutes. It's done. I don't need to expedite it or do some magic video editing. I'll just go into my profile, and there we go. I'm able to see Node.js. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. If I click on this, hey, there we go. Now this is available. Anybody can say docker pull and just copy this command and can run this. Let's try this out. Let's try this out. So what we're going to do is first, let's go to the dashboard, and we are going to go ahead and remove this image. We can do that from command line as well, but this Docker desktop is like really easy. I want to delete this forever, the container that's using it. So there is a container which is running it. All right. So we need to first, we'll remove this later on, but the whole idea is I'll walk you through that, how to remove this and all of that. Right now, even if you try that, that might not work because sometimes command line is much more powerful. This is working. There are a couple of more ways. So let's just go ahead and delete this. So right now we have no images on our system in the local, but we have something on the remote. So what we want to do now is we'll use the command line. We'll use the command line, and we'll just go up here, copy this, go back into the terminal at any point of time. And this doesn't need to be from this location. It can be from any location. I'll just say docker pull, and this is going to pull the image, this time not from the local, but actually from the Docker hub. And it says, hey, I need to give a specific version, docker pull, and then I have to say colon, and I have to say 0.1 dot release. And yes, we can actually mention it latest and stuff, then it will pull up easily and all of that. We'll work on through that later on. Right now, this is just the basics. And notice here, it is pulling it. It already exists. And now we have an image here. So a newer image was downloaded, and I can verify that with my Docker dashboard in the images that, hey, this image existed. And this time, this image was not something that we created. This actually was brought into our local from this remote repository. This is really fantastic. And now, notice one important thing. The person who is going to run this image on AWS or on GCP don't have to really worry about whether behind the scene there is a Node.js or not. Really, absolute nothing. It could be behind the scene in Python. I would have just said Node.js, and still the working functionality of how you manage it into Kubernetes or your cloud containers and all of that, that remains same. And that is the beauty about it. So that is the basics of behind the scene of an upcoming series that we are going to start very soon about the Docker and the Kubernetes, and you're going to have so much of the fun. So hit that subscribe because that series will come up very, very soon based on how much you hit that subscribe and how much you share on this video. Let's go ahead and catch up in next video.